welcome back to another Union Arena Deck Tech. Today I'm joined by Tsmmaa, and we're diving into one of the wildest win conditions in the NA meta, Green Saitama from One Punch Man. This deck is all about surviving long enough to cheat out a massive 15-cost Saitama, using cards like Genos, Self-Mill, and strong defensive setup to make that dream a reality. If you're into big plays and even bigger damage, this one's for you. So, before we kick it off, Tsmmaa, you want to say a couple honorable things about the deck for us?
Yeah, so hi, I'm Tsmmaa. I met Joey through Rumble Rama, and I'm from Canada. This is the deck that I played for a whole month in Rumble Rama, and I achieved one of their top placements there. So this is a deck I feel pretty comfortable around, and honestly, it has done me really good after 15 game loss streak. So honestly, it's a really good deck. I promise you'll have a lot of fun with it. And thank you, Joey, for having me. Let's go learn about the deck.
Hell yeah. So for people new to the deck, how would you describe the Green Saitama? What is it trying to achieve in your games?
Right, so for Green Saitama, I would say there's two main play styles. One is a very mill-centric. If your opponent is not a super aggressive type, you can take advantage of that and become a very mill-centric deck. But if you see an aggressive deck, you would focus on creating these big bodies in the front and then playing more defensively until all your pieces come together, and then hitting them with the one punch, Big Saitama 15-2 to close out the game.
Okay, now that seems like a really hard thing to achieve. How does Genos help this deck work? Are there specific turn patterns or setups that you aim to do to really highlight how powerful Saitama can be?
Yeah, so on the right, I have a few tech cards for different matchups, of course. So my first tech card is this winner, Genos. It's actually a double block for energy costs, where when rated, it becomes double block, and then when sideline, you can pick up the bottom piece to your hand. So this is a really important card coming out of your life or from your hand, because a lot of decks would see Green Saitama and opt to become a rush format. So they would push up their 1500s, 2500s, try chip in some early damage to gain an advantage and not let you build out that energy line. Other tech cards I have are Hero Association to cheat out three cost important cards like Watchdog Man, or the Genos that becomes a 3 energy generator for the cost of 3. So this is one of the most pivotal cards in the deck, which I will talk about more in the future. But smaller stuff like Tank Top Master and Child Emperor will help you accelerate your deck and move forward. As for specific turn patterns and setups I aim for, I try to maintain 2 Genoses in the back in the mid to late game. That way your opponent knows that there's a threat coming in, and trying to have at least 1 king in the front or back, knowing that I can have that ability to mill the top 3 of my deck and then move on from there. So besides that, I like having Silver Fang, which is one of the premier cards in this deck, a 4/500. I could become a good blocker, and people are usually pretty scared to swing into it because it has the ability to check top and mill it as well. So yeah, that's the basics, the surface level of the deck.
All right, so how would you describe this deck? Is this more of a combo-centric deck, a late-game control deck, or more along the lines of a mid-rangey explosive deck with the speed that you can get Saitama out?
Yeah, so if the opponent doesn't have the right tools, so like specials or removals for your characters, this deck can actually become a pretty fast deck. I've had a game where I was able to push up my king and play 3 Genoses at the back really early on, and then since the opponent didn't respect the king in the front, he wasn't able to remove it. He pushed damage, I just garnered 15 cards in the back, and I was able to push out the 15 too. But that's an exception. This deck is usually just in a control deck because it has a lot of removal options. So King unrated, if you discard a Saitama card, it becomes it can blow up any card, anything from 5 to 7 to anything but a Saitama. And we have 4 King engines, and a lot of these pieces will help you control the board as well. These Silver Fangs are big 4/5 blockers, so they act as a big solid wall against those super aggro decks. So I would say more control than mid-rangey.
Okay, so this deck has what I'm defining as 3 different specific elements. We have ramp elements, we have self-mill synergy, and we have removal elements. Can we break down each of these different components in the deck to better identify what these cards look like for somebody playing against Saitama or perhaps playing with it? And can we start with your, let's go with your ramp package first, your accelerating package.
Yeah, so I would say the ramp package starts with these 2 characters. So King, when in the front line, has the ability to activate main and mills top 3 from your deck. What you want to see from the mill, hopefully, is 3 of these 15 ones. These 15 ones, when taken from the top of your deck to the sideline through only effects, which is just King or Silver Fang, allows you to draw 1 more card. So these draws are really important when you want to grow your hand size. So the best case scenario is you press to activate main, you draw into a final or into a key piece, and those can extend your turns to have very combo heavy turns. Same with the Silver Fang. On play, when attacking and when blocking, you have the ability to check the top of your deck. If it is that 15-1, gladly mill it because you'll get that extra 1 draw per turn. And then with this effect, all your Saitamas get reduced by 1 energy for every 5 cards in your sideline. So that's really important. That's how you become a ramping system.
Now, for the cards that are your double energy producers, can we go over what role each of them are playing in this deck and what side tech that they have attached to them as well?
Right. So early game, what cards I look out for is the double energy cards. So Kings, Genos, Watchdogman, and Terrible Tornado is more of a late game tech. So I would opt to mill that card. But these 3 would be great in my opening hand. If I know I'm facing against a big, aggressive, switch deck or someone who wants to push and damage, Watchdogman in the front line is not a bad alternative. So you would play out 2 zeros or 3 if you have the ability to cheat out a 3 cost using Hero Association or Stinger. These 3 costs can come out very cheap and then build out your double energy backline really fast. Genos and Watchdogman. So Genos, 9 times out of 10, you want to leave them in the back. There are some situations where you have to push them up or they're forced up, which you cannot control, but always in the back. Watchdogman, if there's an opportunity to final and have the ability to swarm your board with Silver Fangs, Watchdogman can safely be put in the back. But like I said, if you're against Rush, please put him in the front. And for the Kings, very situational, right? There are people who vanilla the King, leave it in the back, or they wait for an opportunity where the opponent puts out a big monster and uses its raid effect where, when played, sideline a Saitama, pop anything. So Kings are more reactive. Genoses, if there's nothing aggressive, and Watchdog, if there's something aggressive, leave it in the front.
Okay. Now, moving along, we have the big payoff cards. We already touched on the 15-1 Saitama, but can we talk about what makes this deck utterly terrifying to play against? The 15-2 Saitama. Can we go over its play pattern, how strong it is, everything about this card so people are aware of what they are up against?
Right, so this is the card. When I first started this deck, I had 4 of them because I thought of how amazing this card is, but 3 is just enough because you have the ability to grab it with Terrible Tornado. But what makes this card so scary is it's only 2 AP card. So when you know your opponent who's playing Green Saitama has those Genesis set up and has around 10 to 20 cards on the sideline, they do have the ability to cheat out with King Engine, with moving up the king, with the milling, to cheat out these cards out. And usually these Green Saitamas are very greedy players, so they will have finals ready. So either you get comboed into a finals, a special from hand, and then play this out. Or if they're super greedy, they play this out, final, play another Saitama out, and then let me tell you about its abilities. So when Saitama is on the field, it cannot be removed by any specials, any events, any effects. It can be rested, that is one of its counters, but it cannot be removed from the field. When swinging, Saitama first sidelines one character. So a lot of people tell me, oh, I will tech in some null impacts. Well, that doesn't really work, does it? Because when Saitama swings, sideline that null impact. And then if your opponent doesn't have a full board of characters, so say they're like 2 people or 3 people on the board, each time this swings, it sidelines 1, and then the opponent is forced to take the impact 3. So there's 2 effects to it. The first one is impact 3, damage 7. So it's great to OSA when you swing it. So they either take 3 or they can risk taking that final in the 7. A lot of people do opt for the 3, and sometimes they live, sometimes they don't. And that comes into the play where Green Saitama players have 2 different ways to play the game. Some Saitama players, like me, like to chip down their opponent down to 3 life, if possible, because they know that when the Saitama comes down, the opponent is forced to take that 3. Other Saitama players don't bother swinging at life at all. They build up their energy and their sideline for when that turn does come. They could just drop as many Saitamas as possible, and both Saitamas have damage 7, so there's always that game threat without the small swings and worrying for a special trigger to hit one of their defenders, right?
So I'm one of those Saitama players. I wait.
Yeah, 15-2 Saitama is a really strong game ender, and if you don't have it, it's a get trigger, so you'll always have it in your hand unless you mill it all out, which Tornado will help grab from your field.
Okay, so moving right along, what does your ideal start look like? What is your, in Magical Christmas Land, this is your turn 1, turn 2 play, assuming that you're going second.
Right, so actually, I love going first with this deck, and that is a hot take that a lot of people do, but I just like the ability to have that ability to go 1, 2, and then your third AP turn, blow up your board. So theoretically, if I go first, Stinger, and then turn 2 would be a king into, depends on the matchup. This king, I believe, is one of the strongest pieces in this deck because it helps you search for any king. So if you're missing that third 0 cost, you can find a king, or anything higher than 6 or more energies. So what this is good for is finding your Silver Fangs, your king raids, or Saitamas in case you have a king raid in your hand, and if you want to special something. So turn 2, king into, say, another 0 drop, and then after that, turn 3, you become a very explosive turn in which you can, say, play a Genos, raid king, sideline the Saitama, draw a card off raid king, final, and then play 2 Silver Fangs in the front. So one thing I like doing with this deck is I don't like putting 1 threat in the front all the time. What I like doing is putting 2 or 3 at the same time. So if your opponent does look at your board and they have the special ready for your king, at least you have 2 Silver Fangs set up in the front, in which every turn you'll be able to mill 2. So that's the Christmas hand. Stinger, 2 zeros into a final Genos raid king. So now you're at 6 total energy, and put out your Silver Fangs. That's literally the only way I could beat Purple Code, by having those Silver Fangs out on turn 3.
I mean, fair, very fair. So looking at this, we've already touched a little bit on your worse matchups. Can we go over some of these weaknesses that the Green Saitama deck has and how to better fortify yourself as a Green Saitama player for anybody who's newer at the deck?
Right. So the one thing that Green Saitama suffers from is their triggers in this deck. If you see the X-Burst deck, is there's around 21 draw triggers. So a lot of the life coming from Green Saitama will not affect the board state that much. So against one of their worst matchups, Blue SAO, a lot of the times you're focusing on trying to stop those double attacks, but since they're all 4K, this blocker Genos was not that effective. The best way to fortify myself from one of these faster decks is finding these Silver Fangs to have the ability to at least take the 4K and not get one of my items removed. A lot of the times in the recent decks and recent metas, I've been thinking about putting in more Genoses and maybe a Moomin Rider as well. That way I can keep the bodies on the field without taking too much life at a time. The worst matchups, I would say, has to be Blue SAO, and then other meta decks, including Sukuna and Code Geass, depending on how fast you could find your pieces versus how fast they could rush you down. I believe the Blue Sukuna matchup is around 60-40, depending on if the Sukuna draws their God Hand, or if not, Green Saitama would have a very good matchup. And against Purple Code, if you find your Silver Fangs early, it's a great matchup as well. The only bad thing about Purple Code is you are not allowed to bring these guys up as block fodder, because when I was new to this deck, one of my locals, I pushed 3 of them up, and then the player just rated Gawain -1K'd, and all my kings just got sidelined. So,
and you learned your lesson, didn't you?
I learned my lesson. So don't push up kings against Purple Code. But yeah, a lot of the matchups are dependent on if you find these Silver Fangs through the king raids, the king searchers, and if you have the ability to get that out early enough. So yeah, that's the hard matchups. Blue SAO, I must say, it's like Betty versus any ramping deck from One Piece. It's a 20-80 matchup, I promise you. It's unless they break their first 2 turns, it is a hard matchup and kind of unwinnable.
Just going wide decks in general, the ones that get to attack 5, 6, 7 times with 4Ks, it's so hard to beat those decks if they have just an average draw. You know. But that is. But the upside of playing this deck is, well, how would you say its good matches are? What would you say the style of decks that Green Saitama really preys upon?
Right. So during that month where I played all Saitama, I would say a lot of the decks that require also a lot of ramp. So I would say their green matchups are really good, and other blue matchups are also pretty good. Because of the fact in which when their opponent is making that ramp style where they need to have 7, 6 energies to put out their big monsters, these kings are effectively can cancel out their hard work, and as well as not having the ability to get our king special that early or remove that early lets us build enough time to have this 15-2 come out, and when the 15-2 comes out, the game is basically done. So I would say a lot of the matchups, there aren't any hard losing matchups coming to mind right now. The only thing is, when I was doing rare battles with Green Saitama, I would say the red matchups were relatively easy because Speed, Garo, and even Yellow Saitama, as long as they don't find their god hands, we have enough fodder blockers and we have enough strength in our Silver Fang to block all those big hitters. And honestly, this deck ramps faster than Garo. This deck ramps faster than Muzan. This deck has the ability to remove a lot of the sisters from Demon Slayer. So it has a lot of good matchups. It's just that one blue deck from SAO. One blue deck from SAO.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that covers the majority of what we wanted to talk about here. Massive thanks to you, Tsmmaa. I'm going to keep calling you Tsmmaa, buddy. I'm sorry. For joining me and walking us through the explosive nature of the strongest hero in all of existence, Saitama. God, it's such a fun deck. So let people know where they can find you and your gameplay of anything that you might do in the future.
Yeah, so thanks again, Joey, for having me. This is great. I love talking about this deck. They could find me on YouTube, or if they want to join the Rumble Realm and Discord, I'm always there playing on games and chatting it up about Union Arena. You could find me on YouTube under Tsmmaa, or just hit me up in the Discord and we could talk about new builds and new meta for Union Arena. Yeah. Appreciate your time, Joey.
Of course. And of course, you can find me as well down in the description below, where he will be as also. Thank you very much. Fantastic APs, and we'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.